So last year, Motorola introduced the original Moto 360, and it pretty much set a standard for how we look at our smartwatches. Instead of being futuristic and, too techy, it was more like a regular watch, meant to fit in a little bit more. Well, this year they've updated that line and they have the version 2, and I'm ready to share with you guys my full review of this mother trucker right here, and without any time wasting, let's go ahead and jump straight into it. So to cover some of the differences between last year's model and the new model, I'll be just mentioning things throughout the video. And the very first thing I want to mention is the fact that the newer model is a little tiny bit smaller. I'm talking like 0.1 millimeters, so not much of a size difference, but it does come in another size. So usually there was only the 46 millimeter, that's what last year was, and you can still get that today. But they also have a 42 millimeter for people that have smaller wrist, or if you're a woman and you want a smaller watch. So they do offer a smaller size configuration for people looking for that model. As far as the overall build quality and design goes, it's pretty much exactly the same. You're looking at stainless steel and it still has a flat tire design. So if you want a more circular watch face as in the screen, then you might not want to look at the Moto 360. But it doesn't really bother me, and that's where the ambient light sensor is kept. So they really can't help it, and in order for you to get the full functionality of the watch, you kind of need that sensor. Also, they've added it in Moto Maker, and even though last year was added in Moto Maker later on, they have many more color options, and you actually have up to 400 different combinations you can make of this watch. So if you have a Moto X and you love the whole Moto Maker experience, you're gonna feel right at home with the 360. There are a few subtle differences between last year and this year when it comes to button placement. Of course, you only have one button found on the 360, but they've moved it from the 3 o'clock position to the 2 o'clock position, making it a little bit more functional and just practical whenever you use it. Motorola has implemented a quick release system, and it's really cool, and it gives you the ability to switch out your bands on the fly in a matter of minutes. It's definitely not as fast as the Apple Watch, but it's much faster than last year, and you no longer need tools. If you do have to remove a few links from the bracelet, however, it's still a pain in the ass, and you do need some tools for that. If you guys want me to make a video on that, just let me know in the comment section, and I'll make sure I try to get to it here in the near future. But in any case, I'll leave a few websites in the description where I got my information from. Nothing has changed from last year when it comes to the sensors and the microphone position. The microphone is still located on the left-hand side, and you still have your ambient light sensor, your pedometer, your heart rate monitor, and all the other goodies that you got last year. So nothing has been added, but they have been improved in the sense that they're much more fluid and responsive. The display has an increased resolution, and it's also a little bit more flush than last year. So it's still beveled, but it's just a little bit thinner. And I think that's where they thinned this thing out, even though, like I said, it's hardly noticeable unless you put them side by side. Now, the resolution of the old display was 320 by 290. And the new display features a 360 by 330 display. And if you're looking at the PPI, it's pretty much 205 versus 233. So you get a little bit more resolution with this new watch than you do the old watch, but it's hardly noticeable. So they've stuck with an IPS panel, which really isn't a bad thing. I just wish they would have gone AMOLED, because AMOLED A conserves battery when you leave the watch on all the time, and it also just has those dark inky blacks. But IPS is great when it comes to outdoor visibility, so when you're under direct sunlight, you can still make out all the content on your watch with no problem. Now, the resolution is definitely not as high as, say, something like the Apple Watch or LG's watches, so it's a little bit pixelated, especially if you've grown to like the Apple Watch, which I moved from. But it's not bad. I mean, everything is still pretty sharp, and I really don't have any complaints when it comes to the resolution. It does look a little bit pixelated at times, but I can still make out everything on there. Now, it's important to note that the smaller Moto 360 has a resolution of 360 by 325, and it actually has a higher PPI of 363. Now, I don't have that one. I wasn't able to look at it or use it, but I'm guessing things are probably a little bit more sharper on that watch than, say, the one that I have, which is the 46 millimeter. Now, last year's 46 millimeter watch and this year's 46 millimeter watch have the exact same screen size, which is roughly about 1.5 inches, and I love it. This is a man's watch, I feel like. It's big, and some people might be put off because of how bulky and big it is, but once I got it on my wrist, I just love it, and it just functions great. Of course, the Moto 360 is running on the latest version of Android, and all you have to do is pair it up with Android Wear on any Android device. It works like a charm, and it functions just as good on the Moto X as it does on the Galaxy S6, so you don't have to worry about really any compatibility issues. Now, you do need Android 4.3 or higher in order for this to work, but like I said, everything functions perfect. But recently, within a matter of months, iOS has actually added Android Wear, and it functions awesome. It doesn't give you all the features, but it does play nicely together. I find myself using my Moto 360 more than my Apple Watch, even though I absolutely love the ability to respond to things and interact with my Apple Watch, which they've crippled out of the Moto 360. I mean, I can't even delete some of my emails, and I definitely can't respond to my text messages off my 360, but I just love the overall design of this watch much better than the Apple Watch. Now, Android Wear, like I said, runs great, but I find its limitations to drive me crazy. It does support a lot of third-party apps, but you're not able to interact with them the same as you can on the Gear S series or the Apple Watch, and that's what really drives me crazy. I love having a speaker on my watch. The Apple Watch is one of the main things I love about it, is the fact that I can take a phone call from my watch. Whereas the Moto 360, if you answer a phone call, it goes to your phone. So you still have to have your phone in your hands or present in order to interact with anything pretty much. Now, in terms of software, like I said, it's running Android Wear and Android 5.1.1, and it runs really smooth. In fact, it surprised me because last year it wasn't as fluid as this year, definitely. And that's because it has a Snapdragon 400 processor clocked at 1.2 gigahertz, whereas last year it was a single core processor clocked at 1 gigahertz. So you're looking at quad core versus single core, and there's definitely a jump in processing speed. So the battery life has been increased from last year to this year. Last year it was 320 milliamp hours, this year it's 400. So there's quite a bit of a jump there, even though it seems like it's not that significant. Last year I was able to get about a good strong day of use. This year I'm able to get about 2 days of use with the ambient display turned off. Now, if I leave it turned on, it's roughly about a day, but I don't need the watch face on all the time. So I keep it off and then just have my wrist gestures on, and I'm able to get 2 good full days out of it just putting my watch bedside at night. Now, the smaller watch has a 300 milliamp hour battery, and according to other people's results and from what I read online, you're able to get about a day and a half worth of use out of it with the ambient display off. Now, in terms of RAM and storage, you're looking at 512 megabytes of RAM and 4 gigabytes of storage, which is exactly the same as last year, so nothing has changed in that department. And they've also carried over the IP67 rating, making it water and dust resistant. So again, same as last year, and you get some great overall protection, especially if you're in healthcare and you wash your hands a lot. In terms of where you can get one of these, I know most cell phone carriers will start carrying these. I know Verizon already has them, and I know you can get one at Best Buy. As far as wanting a customizable one, you have to get it from Moto Maker, and you have to go directly online and make it, and it usually ships in about 1 to 2 weeks. In terms of whether or not you should get this over the original, and honestly that just comes down to you. Do you have the money to spend on the new one? If you do, then go for it, but you're not gonna get double the performance of last year. You're gonna get a beautifully crafted watch, and it definitely looks better than last year, but in terms of functionality and performance, it's not double. You're only getting about a half a day of better battery life, and you're not gonna get that much more responsiveness when it comes to the internals. Yes, it is better, and yes, it is much smoother, but it's not double the performance. Well guys, that pretty much does it for my full review of the new Moto 360. I really do enjoy this watch, don't get me wrong. Even though I had a lot of negative things to say about it, I do like this watch. I love the cosmetics behind it. I just think that I paid way too much money for this model. If you guys enjoyed this video, drop me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Follow me on all my social media connections, and if you have any questions about this year or last year's model Moto 360, go ahead and get at me and I'll get back to you guys as quickly as possible. And of course, I'll talk to you in the next video. Peace.